I said, yeah. I said, stay out. Put your belts on tight. You're fixing to be probably 4 wide going into turn 1. I wasn't ready to step out of the car at that time. I'm like, what's going on? And I turn around, and of course I see my car on the start-finish line and Josh walking towards pit road. And I'm like, well, guess we don't have to worry about a plan to fix this thing. Pretty sure we're done here. I just work as hard as I can and see how far I can get, I guess.
Welcome to episode number 2 of the Pit Crew podcast. Today, we got a special guest. It is the owner of DGM Racing, Mario Gosselin himself. Today, we're going to be joined by Chris from Drive Smart, Robert Hill.
Without further ado, let's bring in the man of the hour. Mario, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Hey, we couldn't be more excited, and I know you've probably been working your butt off. I seen in the last 24 hours, not only you're going to be running 2 cars at Daytona, but it looks like you got a third one. So I can only imagine that that put a little more work on the plate, right?
Yeah, a little bit. We put a deal together. I don't know. It's kind of been brewing for a couple weeks, but all came together yesterday, and so we're going to bring a third car down to Daytona.
So where I like to always start with these podcasts is I like to start from the beginning. So if you don't mind, Mario, tell us a little bit about the early life. Like, where are you from, your childhood? Give us a little bit of your background.
Way back in the early life, I was born in Canada, a little town near Quebec City, and lived there for about 10 years. And then my father, my whole family, we moved to South Florida, and didn't speak a word of English, so that was a tough couple of years, but made it through and started racing Hialeah Speedway early 90s. I was about 16, 17 years old, and started racing there as a hobby just for fun. And 2 years after my very first start, which my first start was like a demolition derby, like fan participation stuff, and 2 years later, found myself in a super late model, and it took me a couple years to, get used to it and be competitive, and then started traveling with Super Late Model Tour. USA Tour was called back then, 1993. Started to get real competitive and winning some races and won championships 94, 95, 97. Hooters Cup came along, started doing that, touring with them, and then turned into Hooters Pro Cup. And I wanted to get on the bigger tracks. All those series ran, basically 3/4 mile or smaller. And I wanted to run on the bigger tracks, and so I attempted my first ARCA race in 1999, went to Charlotte Motor Speedway. Back then, there was 2 rounds of qualifying. I think first round qualifying was they took the top 20, and then the next day they had another round of qualifying for the rest of the field. I think they started 40 cars. There was usually 50, 55 cars showing up at these things, and my goal was just to make first round qualifying. I wanted to work on race setup the next day and didn't want to have to worry about, getting in the race. And long story short, sat on a pole, first ARCA race, Charlotte Motor Speedway. Wasn't even fully approved to run the race yet. They told me they would watch me through practice, and if they thought, I guess if I knew what I was doing or if I was safe enough not to, put anybody else at risk, they were going to let me race. And turned out I sat on the pole, won the race. So that was a lot of fun. That was a May race, so that was when they ran the Open and all that stuff. I mean, there was over 100,000 people in the stands and a lot of people watching on TV. So tried that a million times and never have that result again, but it all worked out. I mean, put in a lot of effort, tried to make sure, we had good equipment, good people, but definitely, a Cinderella story.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, that's incredible. First race, go and get pole and then go win it. And they almost didn't even let you race because you were, that's a pretty incredible background. So DLB, I know you had a couple questions lined up that you wanted to ask about early. So what were you thinking, sir?
Absolutely. So obviously, you got 3 cars entered for Daytona. How important is that from a car owner standpoint to have 3 teammates working together going for this win with Josh, Natalie, and Kyle?
Well, I feel like it's not really, it's one team with 3 cars, right? And what we can learn, everybody shares. I mean, we share all the knowledge on our team. And if one person learns something, we're going to apply it to the other car and see if it, applies to that driver or anything like that. But also, Daytona, you always got to have a partner. So you get hung out and maybe your teammate or your teammates get lined up and, every team makes all these scenarios and comes up with all these things, how they're, everybody's going to work together and it's going to be great. But the truth of the matter is when a green flag falls, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But for sure, we're going to get all our spotters together and all our drivers together and try to make it where they can decide it. If we get a run and we get hooked up together and we stay committed to each other and we're there, if we're fortunate to be there at the end, let's decide it from turn 4 to the start-finish line.
Owning a team out in Florida, is there any difficulties or challenges owning a team in Florida versus having it right dead center in Mooresville? Obviously, you got 2 shops to work from, but is that challenging in any sense?
Well, I mean, logistically, it's a little more challenging, but, at the end of the day, I feel like we're able to keep our operating costs down, even though we have logistical challenges. I feel like it helps keep our operating costs down being in Florida. Obviously Charlotte is the center of it all, and there's a lot of teams. There's a lot of Cup teams. There's a lot of teams with big funding, and if you get some good guys working for you, a lot of times they get approached and they're gone. Being here, headquartered in Florida, we try to bring some people in and keep the same people, and I feel like it works out for us.
I'm going to take it over to Robert. So Robert is another brother of the North, right? And Robert had a pretty funny story before we started. So Robert, go ahead. And first, I want you to tell the story about your sim racing with the truck, and then go ahead and ask away.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, Mario, about how you used to run the Tire Monkey machine back in the truck series. And I was telling Dustin that when I first started sim racing about 10, 12 years ago, I was looking for a vehicle to race and wanted to tribute to someone from Canada. And I picked your truck. That was the coolest one I saw. And it went pretty well, won a couple races, and then my real talent came through and I finished at the back of the pack, but that's all right. But looking back, Mario, at the start of your career, you mentioned how quickly you ascended through the ranks. You went just a couple years first starting out, then you jumped into super late models and worked your way up. Did you know right away that you wanted to be racing in NASCAR, or were you happy maybe just running the local circuits or even the national super late model circuits at the time?
I mean, I think when I started, it was a hobby. I've always, as a little kid, about the time I could walk or crawl to the shop, my dad's always been in the car business, and I've been around cars all my life and very passionate about anything to do with cars. Obviously, performance is a whole other level, but always been into cars since I've been a little kid, and this made sense to, liking motorsports, liking performance type stuff, and always trying to soup things up or make things faster or better. I don't know, it was just kind of a natural fit for me. Back then when I started, no, I had no vision of even thinking of ever running NASCAR or ARCA or any of that. Watch it on TV and never thought that I could ever get there, and didn't have a path to get there, but I just enjoyed what I was doing. I kept grinding away and working hard, and got some opportunities, and some people wanted to help, and was successful at it because I put everything I got into what I do. It's just a passion, and I was fortunate to be successful at it, and obviously that propelled me to move up quickly. And of course, sometimes when you move up quickly, then you struggle for a little while, but then would persevere and would get successful at the next level, and so on and so forth. It's just it's a lot to learn. I mean, when you're just working on cars and then get into motorsports and you start. It was a big learning curve. But I was young and eager, and it was on my brain 24/7.
Was watching on TV your first taste of motorsports, or was there maybe someone else in your family that was into the motorsports scene before you?
No, it was watching on TV. To be honest with you, I didn't follow it on TV that much until I started doing it. A friend of mine back then, heck, we were in high school, and a friend of mine, his dad was doing demolition derby and spectator races and that kind of stuff. And we were over at his house hanging out one day, and I was like, well, what is this? There's a car there, they were working on it. And so he was explaining it to me. So I went to the racetrack with them and hung out. And of course, by the next event, I had a car. I had a car all fixed up and got involved. It was something I wanted. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but never at that time. I probably wasn't even watching NASCAR on TV at that time.
One thing from the DriveSmart perspective, part of the reason we fell in love with you, your family, and your team is you are one of the hardest working men I have ever seen in my life. Like you probably have a wrench in your hand right now. Honestly, if you held your hands up, but don't drop it now. You always have a wrench in your hand. So at what age did you really start working on the cars? Like how young were you when you started it?
I'd have to find these pictures, but I was probably, barely walking out of diapers. Might have still been in diapers, and I was at the shop, had a screwdriver in my hands. I remember being very young. I don't know, 4 or 5 years old maybe, and my dad, he had a car that he was parting out or whatever, and of course I wanted to work. I always wanted to help him, look up to him, and he was able to fix anything, and so I wanted to work. He says, all right, well, he pulls this car out of the yard, and he says, I want you to take every bolt you see on this car. Puts me inside the car, and he says, take every bolt you see out of this car, and gave me a little tool set, and I was wrenching away. Boy, he'd come check on me a couple hours later, and all kinds of stuff taken apart.
So as we go through your early life, right? You start racing, you have the pole, you win the race. So kind of walk us a little bit through your racing career, right? Because I know you started young, and you're in your teens when you start really kind of competing. So kind of walk us through your racing career for a little bit.
Like I said, we did local track probably for 2 years at Hialeah, running late models, and obviously big learning curve there. Took me, I think the first year I won one race. And then the second year got a little better, started traveling a little bit. And then, some people started helping me, and I was able to get, better equipment, more help. And 93, I think, is when pretty much I, really busted out and started winning a lot of races and, being super competitive. So 93, 94, we were traveling super late model races, and then 95 we started traveling on the Hooters Cup circuit. So then we were going, Carolinas, Virginia, Milwaukee Mile, a lot of these racetracks, with super competitive, a lot of fun. A lot of track course across Georgia, Alabama. We were all over the place, and so we were very competitive. We were always one of the cars to beat, and kind of learned through my career, in the beginning, just qualifying was always one of my biggest issues. I would practice well and I would race well, but, I could be fifth in practice and then I would qualify 20th, and one day we had a Triple Crown Challenge coming up, and qualifying was so important because there was 45, 50 cars showing up for this thing, and one of the promoters here locally that was promoting Lakeland Speedway, he says, what are you doing Sunday? And so I'm nothing. Why? He says, well, I want you to bring your car and bring like 5 sets of tires with you. And it's okay. So we get to the track, and he said, all right, go ahead and get your car to your liking where you're happy with it. So I went out a few times, got the car, okay, it's driving good. What are we doing now? It's all right, well, I want you to take a set of those cold tires, and I want you to go 2 laps and then bring it in. So, of course, me being me, it always took me 5 or 6 laps to get going. So I go 2 laps and he's waving me in, and I go a 3rd lap because I knew that one was going to be better. And he's like, "What are you doing? Stop. What are you doing?" So, well, it was going to be a better lap. Yeah, but qualifying's 2 laps. So bring it back in, put 4 cold tires on it, go out again, 2 laps. And we did that for, I don't know, probably 3, 4, 5 hours. I mean, 2 laps, bring it in, 2 laps, bring it in. And long story short, that Friday night, it was a 100-lap race. I sat on a pole and led every lap. That was my first pole ever. What a difference it made, and I bet that person probably doesn't even realize or know the difference that they made in my career by doing that. But that was Don Nerone, and I'm still appreciative of him, taking care of me and looking out for me and taught me a lot of things. He was a good promoter. We had a lot of fun, and he probably helped me out more than he knows.
I think if I'm correct, you've been married for 27 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did you and your wife meet?
We met at the racetrack. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm sure you had a wrench in your hand at that time too, right?
At the same racetrack that I learned how to qualify at Lakeland Speedway. Michelle, my wife now, at the time, had the parts and tire concession where she was basically selling the tires to all the racers and all the parts. So she had 2 local tracks. It was Lakeland and Auburndale. They were near each other, and Lakeland usually ran on Friday nights and Auburn Saturday nights. And her dad raced, her brother raced, her stepmom raced. So it's in her blood and her family as well. And every once in a while she would race as well. And I think she's probably won just about every Powder Puff she's ever been in. So that's where we met. I met her at the racetrack, and the rest is history. But started, as time went on, and she sold off that business. And when the traveling series came around, the Hooter series, and she was the tire distributor for that series. So we were on the road together. I was spending money, she was making money.
Yeah, isn't that much? Yeah,
she was my spotter for probably 99.9% of my career, maybe right at the end there, when I was running Xfinity and things. And there's so many things going on behind the scenes and things to take care of behind the scenes with the team that we would hire a spotter to spot for me, and she would be behind the scenes taking care of a lot of other things that need to be taken care of. But all the wins and all the championships was actually with Michelle spotting. So I think that's pretty special in itself, just husband and wife traveling across the country and winning races. And I mean, I remember that particular month in '99 when we won the ARCA race. The weekend before that, we won a Hooters race, I think was at Tri-County, which is near Charlotte Motor Speedway. And then the weekend after, we won another Hooters race at Concord Motor Speedway, which is just a few miles the other direction from Charlotte Motor Speedway. So here we are coming out of Florida and going to the Carolinas and basically bringing the trophies back to Florida. So a lot of fun, a lot of pride. Obviously, a lot of work.
You're a family business, right? And we're going to dive into that a little more as we go on. But you have 2 incredible, hardworking daughters. Your wife is in the business. You're in the business. So what's it like raising a family on the road like that? Because you've been traveling the country for, 30 plus years now, right?
When kids were little, is actually when we got our first RV. And the whole family would go on the road, and Michelle's sister, Misty, would come with us, and obviously she would watch the girls, during practice, and basically the whole day she would watch the girls and then go in the stands and watch the race, while Michelle spotted and I raced. And very thankful for that. Very thankful to have Misty with us, take care of the kids. And we just did it. We just did it as a family. You know what I mean? We drove to the track. We raced, and we drove home and got ready for the next week and did it all over again. But now obviously the kids are older and the girls are older, and they're able to contribute and work in the family business. And not traveling with the motorhome anymore because we're on the road 33 weekends out of the year and got a lot to work. We got to hurry up, get back to the shop to get ready for the following race. But yeah, it's I never really. It wasn't planned that way, right? I had no idea that the girls would go to college and graduate, with their degrees and social media marketing and everything that they've done, and then come back. At some point you're like, well, that'd be kind of cool, if they were able to do something and then come back and work for the family team. But it's not like it was planned out that way. Like, okay, girls, you're going to go to college and this is the courses that you're going to take, because then you're going to come back work for the family business. It just worked out that way. It wasn't planned that way, but I think at some point, with them being in college and realizing, learning more about the sport and what they wanted to do, obviously at some point they thought, well, I'd like to do this because possibly I could contribute to the family business in this manner, but for sure in the beginning it wasn't. It was always go to school and figure out what it is that you want to do, and just all that Michelle and I ever asked, that they gave whatever it is they wanted to do, they gave 110% and focused on it, and it just turned out that this is what they wanted to do. And they both out of college went out in the work field and worked for other companies and did other things. And, got called one day and said, Dad, I want to come work at the shop, and obviously Megan first, and she said, Dad, I want to come work at the shop. And I said, well, you need to think it through, make sure that's what you want to do. And she had a pretty good job and, getting promotions and doing well. And so that night I come home and Michelle said, well, talk to Megan today. I said, yeah, I talked to her a little bit. I said, she said that, she wants to come work at the shop. So Michelle had a conversation obviously with Megan before that, and Megan took it as that I wasn't excited or didn't want her at the shop. And of course that wasn't it at all. I wanted to make sure like she really was thinking through that, okay, this is really what I want to do, because it's a lot of hard work. It's not 8 to 5, and it's not, obviously, I'm going to take a pay cut to come do this, and so called Megan and said, hey, it's not that I don't want you. I just want to make sure this is 100%, what you want to do. And she says, well, I've been thinking about this for several months, and it took a lot for me to even, ask you or bring it up to you. I said, well, in that case, in your 2 weeks, and we'll see you Monday, 2 weeks.
To the team. Yeah. Welcome back to the team. 100%. DLB, I know you got a couple questions written down. What else you got there, sir?
So, obviously, you own an entire Xfinity Series team. Has that always been the goal, to own a Xfinity Series team? And with you being a driver team owner, this is going to be a bit of a two-part question. Did you ever want to drive for another team, potentially, in the Xfinity Series? Was it always, or was the plan always to do it yourself?
I just work as hard as I can and see how far I can get, I guess. It's never like a planned out thing, that by October I'm going to be doing this, and by January next year I'm going to be doing this, right? I'm always just busting my butt as hard as I can and get as far as I can. And start with running the trucks, as Robert said, did the Tire Monkey truck, had different sponsors, had a good run. Almost won Talladega one time, finished 6th, but was probably 40 feet from the win at the start finish. I think we were 4 wide, and wound up coming across the line 6th, but had a lot of fun, was very competitive that day. And we had some other runs in the truck that we were pretty competitive, but it became to where I felt like Xfinity is where we needed to be, where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the cars, racing the cars, and I don't know, there's a lot of things financially, that made more sense to be in the Xfinity Series for me. And friend of mine wanted to run some Xfinity races. Guy, Martin Roy, friend of mine out of Canada. Obviously, I did some Pinty stuff with him, and he was like, "Hey, let's get a couple Xfinity cars and do some Xfinity races." And so we went through. We actually did some K&N racing with him to work on his approval process, and then got him in some Xfinity races, and then I started driving a little bit, and I was back and forth to Canada, crew chief in his cars, and won championship with LP Dumoulin. We both worked for Martin at the time, and won the Pinty's championship in 2014. And then I think probably 16, I was almost here. 2016, we were running a lot more Xfinity races and getting more competitive. 2017, I got a call from Alex LeBay, and he had backing from Can-Am, and they'd run good. They were running good, but they were looking for a crew chief for 2017. They ran 2016. 2018, they felt like there was something missing there, and they approached me to go crew chief for Alex, and put a good offer on the table, and also said that if things went well, that Alex would run a couple Xfinity races with us, and went as far as saying, "Hey, if you guys win the championship, we're going to support Alex 2018 campaign in Xfinity." So went and did that, and won. I think it was 11 or 12 race series. We won 5 of those things. All we had to do was start the last one to win the championship. We took the green and we won the championship. And then 2018 is when the real challenge came. Alex was going to run full time, and the thing about that was going to run full time for Xfinity, for our Xfinity team in our car. But the catch was that I had to be the crew chief, which meant that I wasn't driving. Because all along, when I've always dabbled, did all these other things, I was still, racing, whatever, 6, 8, 7 races a year, maybe 10, whatever. But so that year, 2018, I didn't drive. I was crew chief, and we were successful. We had a lot of fun. We didn't win any races, but we definitely turned some heads, as a young team and not a lot of resources, and just, first year running full time. I mean, I feel like we did really well. And a lot of the, bigger teams, more established teams have told me a number of times at the track that, they were really impressed with what we were able to do. And so that's kind of where I wasn't ready to step out of the car at that time. I always felt like I was going to race again, but it's just what I had to do. I just, pay the bills, and felt like that was what I needed to do. And so that was the last year that I drove. I've done a couple late model races and some things here and there, but 2017 is probably the last year that I really raced, and for a number of races. Tried to race, I don't remember what year it was, probably 2020, maybe 2021. Had an opportunity to run Daytona, Xfinity race, and went down there, was like 14th in practice, had good car, lease motor, the whole deal, and rained out qualifying. And I was, 9th entry at that time on my team, and have any points, and go figure, rained out qualifying, so I didn't get to race. But I was really looking forward to it, but it apparently wasn't meant to be. And now, obviously a lot of time has gone by since 2018, and I feel like I've been out of the seat for so long, and I enjoy the crew chief aspect of it. Always have, but I think I've come to the conclusion now where I'm okay with not driving the car and just figuring out how to make it fast and making the calls on the box and doing all that stuff. I'm more okay with it now than I was that first year when Alex drove full time. That was hard. That was hard for me to not actually be in the car driving it.
It's got to be tough to kind of start taking that transition, especially when you said like it was never planned, kind of just all worked out, right? You worked your butt off and you kind of got to each step of your journey, and that had to be a weird transition. So I'm going to ask you, at what point, and I know you explained like from racing to crew chiefing, but when did you start taking this ownership level at like how did that happen, right? Like how did you become the DGM? How did you become Mario, the owner of 3 cars in Xfinity?
We weren't running full time, and then with Alex that season we ran full time, and then there was always demand. Some people would want to race, have sponsorship, and we're asking questions, and so there was a time that we added a second car part time and one full time, and then there's incentives at staying a certain place in the points with the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The way things are, obviously, if you're higher up in points, you get to park sooner, you get to go through. So everything's done in point order, from parking to going through tech to rolling out on track for practice and all those things. And also there's bonus money. If you're top 30 in points, there's bonus money involved. So next thing you're trying to keep that second car, and a lot of time as well, now that I think about it, we were running one car and we would start and park the other car for funding. So we'd bring 2 cars to the track. We'd practice both cars. We'd qualify both cars, but the second car would just run a handful of laps, and we would use that money to put towards the car that was racing. So we did that quite a bit. I mean, there's times that it's just what we had to do to survive, right? We were working hard looking for sponsorship, but we weren't really an established team and didn't have the girls in the background. They were going to school, and didn't really. I mean, I was doing it all. I was wrenching on the cars. I was driving the car. I was looking for sponsorship. I was driving the hauler. Obviously, Michelle was helping out everything she can, but she was raising 2 kids at home as well. So my resources became pretty limited. I need to finish the car, but I got to have money to be able to race it. So you're trying to figure out how we're going to make it to the next week and the next week. So there's times we probably start and park 2 cars to race one, and doing crew chief jobs on the side. I mean, whatever we could do just to put money in the bank to race. And, Josh Williams was a big part of our team, racing full time. I mean, he's a lot like me as far as he's always, wanted to race, always had this racing thing in his blood. And so sometimes he would start and park the car so that I could race. There's times that he start and park so we had money so he could race the following week, and then it became 1 full-time car, 2 full-time cars as we got, more involved, more competitive, and got some demand from some drivers to drive. And then, fortunately, we were able to be successful enough to get some attention and get some traction and, get where we are now. We're very fortunate to be where we are and keep, getting better equipment, better people. Really excited, for this season, see what it brings. It's racing, right? And you just don't never know, but I feel like this is going to be our best one yet.
Absolutely. And I do just want to touch on 2017. You mentioned the great season you had up in Canada with Alex Labay. That was a special year for me as well. I made my spotting debut in the NASCAR Pinty Series at Mosport at the beginning of that season. So cool experience. And you guys got 12 top 10s in 13 races. So that was an incredible season. 2 finishes outside the top 5, which is pretty much unheard of, and 5 victories. So pretty special there. But you go back to what you mentioned earlier. You had Martin Waugh drive for you. You've had Alex Labay, Alex Gunnett, a handful of Canadian drivers. How do you go about scouting those guys, see who might be the next talent to come in? And is there maybe another Canadian in the pipeline coming soon?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I feel like it was just all it's just relationships, right? And And I'm trying to think back on it. I don't even know how Martin, Roy, and I got involved. I think he called me looking for some cars, said, hey, I want to go Pinty's racing and, looking for some cars. And I knew where some cars were, and we did some stuff. And then he's like, well, will you be interested in coming and help me and working on them and crew chief and kind of got going that way. And I didn't know anything about Pinty's cars. I mean, I knew about racing and I knew about, cars in general, but those cars are very different from anything that's raced anywhere else. I mean, they're a breed of their own a little bit. And it took me a little bit, just like any other series, when you haven't been around, you kind of go around and as a competitor or a crew chief, or you kind of got to learn where you can get an advantage, right? Because I mean, if you're going to win 5 races 1 year out of 13, you figured something out to have an advantage. I mean, there's you're just not going to do it if you don't. But it's a matter of paying attention to what you can do. I mean, I want to kind of like, what can you get away with, right? Or what has somebody not thought about, or what is it that we need to do to be competitive that people are not seeing, or what is it that they are doing, the guys that are competitive? And from going through tech to getting the car on the track, and you gotta be there and you gotta do it to see what the routine is every race. What did they check? What did they check before the race? What did they check after the race? What do they check during the race? Because obviously you win, you don't want to get disqualified, but there's always certain things or routine or rituals or things you can do to stay within the rules, but be right there on the edge of it. And it took me a little bit of going there and working on those things and looking around and figuring things out. But once we figured it out, we were pretty good. I mean, we were real competitive with Martin a few times. Couple races we should have probably won, and then LP came along and we had some really good races and we had some horrible races. And funny story, we were in Saskatoon for a race, and the car was horrible. Worst car we ever had. Just missed it, and we were struggling, so caution come out early, and I felt like my only play was to put 2 tires on the car to even have a chance at staying on the lead lap. But I knew it was way too early to put the tires on, but if I didn't put the tires on, we're going to go a lap down, and I needed to take a big swing at this thing because it was horrible, and I could see it, you know what I mean? And so I don't remember, took a big swing, threw the kitchen sink at it, and put 2 tires on that thing. And the rest of the race went green until like 3 to go. So then everybody had, I think it was 250 lapper. Nobody had gotten tires yet. I'm the only one that put 2 tires. So that, propelled us to the front because everybody had 248 lap tires, and ours were a lot newer, So we were running, I don't know, 3rd or 4th, and caution comes out. I'm like, oh crap, we're in trouble now. Everybody's going to come in and get tires. And I'd already put my right side tires on, so I was in trouble. So I told LP, I said, stay out. And he said, what? I said, yeah, stay out. I said, well, he says, everybody's coming to get tires. I said, yeah. I said, stay out, put your belts on tight. You're fixing to be probably 4 wide going into turn 1, Just have to see. I mean, it's not going to do any good to come in here and lose track position and put 2 left side tires. So we stay out. And believe it or not, they go green. Go into turn 1, the 2nd place car washes up into the 3rd place car, and I don't know, they all get tangled up. And somehow we managed to come to the checkered with about a 2-foot lead at the line and won the race. And with the worst possible car we ever had anywhere, we win our first oval race together, So that just shows you that you got to stick with it all the way to the end. You just don't never know how things are going to work out, but that was pretty special. I think it was LP's first oval win, and just to struggle that bad all day and come out with a win, it was just, to me, it was impossible that we were going to do anything, worth a darn, and came out with a win on that day. But Probably got off track a little bit, but that was a pretty cool story I wanted to tell.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. LP's a legend in NASCAR up here in Canada and racing in general. And to hear how he got that first oval win, definitely pretty special. And you mentioned a strategy call making that happen. Do you have a strategy from a certain race that sticks in your mind as, what was I thinking? Or that was crazy, but it worked?
That right there was probably the biggest one that worked out. And man, what sticks out in my mind, it's always the unexpected ones are always the best ones, right? But just off the top of my head, I don't know anything that would top that. Just to be that bad all day and then come out with it. But I remember, there's so many, but strategy wise, yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that one a little bit.
That sounds special though, for sure. A nice victory up there in Saskatoon. DLB, you know where Saskatoon is?
I don't. You're gonna have to tell me.
We'll have a geography lesson later.
That's wild. So, Mario, I got a question about Atlanta last year. You brought up Josh Williams. So he had a bit of a moment last year at Atlanta. I'm curious what your reaction was when Josh parked on the front straightaway and walked away from the car, from a car owner standpoint.
Well, I was okay with the decision he made because, and I think obviously like Josh has been pretty clear about this. It's not like he thought all this through and I'm going to stop here and it's going to cause this and that and the other and turn into what it turned into, right? It wasn't thought out that far. It was just like, I feel like I was done wrong and I'm just going to stop right here and get out, but I was in the pit trying to get things organized to, obviously, so we could come back in and work on the car some more. And, I didn't even know that the stuff that the guys put on blew off, right? Like at that point, I'm not up on the box anymore. I'm not watching TV. I'm down in the pits with the guys trying to get a plan together, what we're going to do. And the only thing I knew was caution's back out. Great. We got another chance to work on this thing, and, so I'm behind the box, and I think I'm talking to one of the officials. We're doing something, and then of course I heard the crowd roar, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And I turn around, and of course I see my car on the start-finish line, and Josh is walking towards pit road, and I'm like, "Well, guess we don't have to worry about a plan to fix this thing. Pretty sure we're done here." And but the thing was, the reason that our car was messed up wasn't of our doing. That race, I kind of understand why the officials did what they did, but I think on the other side, they probably understand our frustration too. We're not one of the teams that's causing ruckus every week and having a lot of issues. We try to make sure our stuff's right and we're prepared ahead of time and whatever. So somebody else wrecks, we get caught up in it. And that race at that point had been just like almost nothing but wrecks, right? Every 2 laps there was a wreck. And I think the officials were aggravated that it was turning out the way that it did. And we just happened to be a victim of those circumstances. We got caught up in a wreck that was none of our doing. And we take the car up, and it was very old, and it was very cold, and I think the tape was old. And it just didn't stick worth a darn, and it all blew off. And they decided that, we brought out the caution because the tape blew off, and it's their discretion, and they took the action that they were going to park us. And it's like, what? You got certain cars that have brought out 4 cautions in this thing, and are causing other people to wreck, and we get, tape fly off our car and we got to stop where, we got to get parked. And so obviously Josh didn't think it was fair. I certainly agreed with him. I felt like, if the officials came to us and they said, "Hey boys, you got one more time to get this right," and if you don't get it right, we're going to park you. Okay, I understand that, and it's stuff that has happened in the past that, you got one more shot at this, and then, you're going to have to go home and get ready for next week. And I would have been okay with that. I just thought that it happened awful quickly. And anyway, it was what it was. But then afterwards, the whole turnout of everything that happened was pretty crazy. But they impounded the car. They put Josh in the trailer. We'll call it jail. They put Josh in jail and impounded the car. So after everybody left the track, we were still there. And finally they said, all right, you can load your car and go home. And I mean, honestly, I don't know. I wasn't upset about it. I didn't think he did the wrong thing. I certainly didn't promote it or tell him to do it or plan on doing it. But I didn't think, I didn't think it was as bad as what they made it out to be. But, of course, it delayed going back to racing for a little bit, but I think the fans loved it.
When Josh did the little heart on the camera, that was so iconic. Like, it was so crazy. So one final question I have here for Mario is, obviously, you're a driver. You're always going to have that itch to get back into the race car. Do you ever still get that itch? And is there a day where we could potentially see you make one final start, one final race?
Well, I think, the itch is there for sure. But when you think about getting back in the car, like the reality of the way you see it in your head, how you want it to play out, and the reality of how is it going to turn out, right? Because I want it to turn out how I'm picturing it. And I feel like that would take, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not like, okay, I can get in the car next week and be competitive. Or maybe I could, I don't know. I mean, but a couple years ago, I took my late model car out and went to a local track, went to New Smyrna Speedway, and I hadn't driven in a couple years. And I think it took me about all but 3 laps. And I was like running competitive lap times for a super late model at that track. So that was pretty cool. That was fun. I mean, I was like, boom, right back in it. I would definitely have to work really hard on my cardio and my conditioning, right? Because I saw that I could be fast quickly. I also saw that about 20 laps, I was wore out. So, I would, I mean, when I was going to drive the car at Daytona, which Daytona is not it's more of a mental track than a physical track. It's not super physical. You go to Daytona, it's not like going to Bristol or Martinsville or Richmond where, I mean, probably the most physical place I've ever been is Bristol. And you don't realize it, but inside a car at that track, running competitively is extremely, extremely hard. Run 5 laps and be totally out of breath like you ran a mile, and you get used to it. You're conditioned for it, but people don't realize, the how physical racing is. They think, what, you're just sitting back and you mashing the pedal, driving the wheel, but it's not quite like that. But I don't know. I feel like to give myself a chance, I would have to probably race my late model a few times, get back in the seat, get back in the beat of things, and it just, I realized that it wouldn't be boom one day I'm gonna race next week and gonna be successful. This has been too long since I've been in it.
I mean, you're an athlete at the end of the day when you're racing. I mean, it's not, and not everybody can do it, right? And it takes a lot out of you. I'm going to say a couple things, right, before we wrap this up. One, first and foremost, Mario's forearms are about as big as my thighs, right? So those things are jacked. Second, Mario, we appreciate you more than you know for coming on to the show, because I know this time next week we're going to be in Daytona, right? You got 3 cars running, and that is going to be a heck of a weekend. So if you guys have been following us this far, make sure you tune in next week, right? And if you haven't seen the video that came out the other day with DLB and with Mario to kind of see a little bit of the behind the scenes, make sure you check into that. And honestly, Mario, we love you, and we're so excited to be down there next week. And we cannot wait to see the product you're going to put on the track, because I know you're probably going to go back to the garage now, right? You don't have to tell us, but I'm sure you're about to go back to the garage now. So I just want to say thank you from all of us here at the Pit Crew Podcast, and we can't wait to see you next week, my friend.
We appreciate you more than you know it, and can't wait to get going next week. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, I think it's going to be the best one yet, but really looking forward to seeing all 3 cars, and Kyle Weatherman in that Drive Smart warranty car is going to be a lot of fun to see that thing on the high banks at Daytona. And man, I can't wait to see how it comes out. It's just it's racing. You put a lot of preparation, you put your heart and soul in it, and you just don't know. It's just, I guess that's why we do it, and that's why we love it, right? I mean, it's like, when you take a big gamble every week, right? You work on these things, you work on these cars, especially the super speedway cars. You love going there, but at the same time, you hate going there, right? Because we all see how it turns out, right? I mean, you work on these cars so hard. Everything is so important. Aerodynamic wise, getting the car to travel, the engine, the drivetrain, you don't want the brakes dragging. Every little detail on those cars is so important. And then, we're going to go out there next week, and probably 10 of these things are going to come out unscathed, and then there's going to be probably another 10 of them that are going to be, going to have some type of damage in one way, shape, or form. And then probably 18 of them are going to be wrecked and some destroyed, but I don't know. We love it. I mean, it's in our blood. It's what we do. And there's also the other side of that when you go there and come out of there with a good finish, man, it's so rewarding.
And Kyle added that lightning bolt right where that L is. So I'm hoping next week we go ahead and strike some lightning, Mario. And I think we really can. You guys have been working your butt off, and we love you so much. So we're going to let you sign off, because I'm sure you want to get some rest or get back to work. And then the rest of us, we're going to go ahead and go do some giveaways. So Mario, we'll see you soon. And God bless you, my friend.
I enjoyed it, man. I hope I can get back on sometime. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Anytime you want. We'll see you soon. Have a great night, Mario.
We'll get you back on after a victory here soon.
There you go.
Guys, episode 2 is out of the way. DLB, Robert, my boys, right? We got episode 2 out of the way, and I had a blast. Episode 3 is going to be filmed in Daytona, right? DLB and I will be in Daytona. Oh, no, wait, I have to do it this way. DLB and I will be in Daytona. Robert will still be in Canada, but we'll all be together, and we are going to have some special guests next week. You probably have seen them before if you've seen the channel. So we ask for 2 things. If you're watching this video or you watch it live, go ahead and make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe on it. And I guess what the boomers say, you got to go ahead and hit the notifications, right?
Hit that bell.
Like that. Yeah, go ahead and hit that bell. And we're going to be bringing you content the entire season.